Welcome to Origin Stories. I'm RD.
I'm Parrot.
We're telling stories behind the digital art revolution
Each week we interview top artists.
and live stream with the community.
Let's go. Today is tomorrow's origin story.
Ben Mauro, welcome to Origin Stories.
Hey, thanks for having me, Roger.
How are you, man?
Good. Surviving another foggy day in Seattle today.
Surviving another sunny day in Florida, although we did just have that weather, so at least you avoided that. But man, we talked about doing this over a year ago at an event, and we had connected there, and now we're here. Fast forward literally over a calendar year, and now we're doing the origin story. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, and time flies so much. I think when you messaged me, we both checked like the last message and like, man, has it been a year already? Because we were just like, oh, we got to do this, and then it just poof, and it feels like it was like 20 years in crypto time or something. It's crazy.
It's wild. It's both overnight and 2 decades long, all at the same time. So let's just keep living through this current time warp.
We got the 10 years of gray hair since then.
Oh yeah. I have to keep on my shaving a little more these days because the gray is sneaking in. So, all right, man. Well, hey, it all starts with this question. Take it anywhere you want to go. Ben Mauro, what is your origin story?
Oh man. Yeah, that's a deep one. Well, I guess for me, a lot of it started when I was just in high school, like trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I guess. Like I just grew up, I was always drawing like everyone else, like every kid just scribbles and draws. And I don't think I did more or less than anyone else. And it probably wasn't until high school where it was like deciding like, what are you going to do with your life? What do you want to do for a living? And parents always want to force you into like doctor or lawyer or something like that. And I was just obsessed with video games and like Grand Theft Auto and Halo and stuff in high school. And my dad was kind of pretty tough on me. So like, I just wanted to keep buying more video games. And he's like, well, then you got to get a job. And so that meant like cleaning up after the dog, mowing lawns, making pizzas, working a dishwasher. And you kind of start, I think initially those early jobs like instilled like, in order to get the thing you want, you have to work really hard, which I'm glad I learned at an early age. But for me, it was also like, I really don't enjoy this. I want to do something with my mind. What could that be? And I was obsessed with video games at the time. It's like, is there a way to work in video games? Maybe like an artist or something? What is that even possible? Like, how do you even do that? And so a lot of the last few years of high school are, I really would love to like design architecture or levels for like a Halo kind of game. How do I do that? Which led me down the path of creating an art portfolio to get accepted into some early art schools, initially for 3D animation out in Seattle, called DigiPen. And after a few years of that, was kind of more about a 3D animation path. And I realized I really enjoyed designing things more and designing these universes, which just meant a different education and a different set of skills, which led me down to Art Center in Pasadena, studying industrial design and entertainment design. And your teachers are like working on Avatar and all these big movies and stuff. So it was like, it wasn't like it is now, right? Like you can go to YouTube and find every single thing you ever want to learn. But at the time, none of that information was public, and you had to like go to Art Center to learn this heavy duty industrial design and entertainment design. It was so new. And so it was like a really awesome time of just learning and growing there. And after that, it led me into the game industry, working early on at Insomniac on some Ratchet and Clank games, some of my first jobs, and interning at like Sony Pictures Animation on some sci-fi films that got canceled, some early versions of Hotel T, I think. And then the goal was to go work in the film industry, which eventually was able to do. I moved to New Zealand for about 4 years to work at Weta Workshop, working on the Hobbit trilogy, Elysium, Chappie, Amazing Spider-Man 2, worked on a movie called Mortal Engines, this big like steampunk kind of post-apocalyptic film, and kind of everything in between. There's just so many projects he worked on there. And after that, I felt like I had kind of been in a studio too long, or learned everything I could working in kind of like contained environment. And I really felt like I needed life experiences. And the only way to do that was kind of go on the road. I sold all my belongings and then lived out of a suitcase with my girlfriend, now wife at the time. And we just kind of traveled the world, and I figured out how to freelance to fund all that. So I was working on Call of Duty to fund this kind of 3-year trek across the world to live on the road in a way as a digital nomad. And at the time, that was really not very common. Like now we're all working from home, right? But at the time that was like really weird. And so I had to figure out like, hey, I'm going to be moving around. Is that okay? And locking in a very long-term contract that could sustain me for that long was pretty cool to figure out at the time. And then after that, I was kind of feeling like I needed to settle back down again. And so I worked on a few films called like Valerian, and then eventually settled down in Seattle to focus on finishing Huxley, a graphic novel that I've been working on for many years at that point. While I worked on Halo Infinite in-house, I kind of have a steady local job. And yeah, that kind of takes me up to probably finishing Huxley, as I quietly built all that on my nights and weekends. And then the NFT moment happened late 2021.
Wait, let's pause before the NFT moment, because I feel like there are 5 different things to unpack with that story.
Sure.
So the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm trying to frame this with approximate times, but it does sound, to your point, like it was a much less common time for someone to just strike out and take a couple years and travel all over the place, be comfortable working remotely. Was there a tipping point? It sounds like it grew over time, where you were feeling like, again, you had learned everything you needed to learn, or that you could learn in the studios. But was there a tipping point? Because sometimes a decision like that takes something to topple you over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I've always, like from the start, it's always, I'm kind of chasing knowledge. I'm chasing, where can I learn the thing I need to learn? And I'm going to do whatever I have to do to learn that thing, like no matter what, right? Like really comfortable in Los Angeles, going to school. I'm going to sell all my stuff and move to another country for 4 years, because there's something there I can't learn anywhere else. To me, that is worth that sacrifice. And kind of the same kind of thing where I don't know, it's also like a feeling like in LA, I was learning a lot, and then you feel like a plateau, and you're like, I feel like I've learned, not that I've learned everything I could learn there, but it's like, there's something else that I need that I can't get in this environment. Where do I have to go to learn that? And for me, that was Weta in New Zealand, because I just felt like they were doing something so different and unique at the time. District 9 had just came out, and I just thought that was like the most original, cool thing ever. And it felt like if I wanted to work on Neil's next movie, that's probably the best place I could go to do that. And also be in an environment that was just so different to anything I would experience in Los Angeles. And kind of the same thing there. I went down there, kind of got that unique experience that I was hoping for. And not that I learned everything, there's always more you can learn, but it felt like there's something else missing now, which is I can only learn so much from Googling photos of things and learning things through the internet. It's like, I need to have that like life experience to draw from in my work, so that I have something meaningful to say, and I grow as a person through these experiences. Because I just felt like I had no life. My life at that point was just like work, stuck in an office, no outside experiences. And I felt like that was holding me back in a way. And so I just needed to make, again, another big jump, and kind of almost like a reset, like sell all my stuff again. Let's start this again. And I guess that's a pretty uncommon way of thinking, but I think that kind of, I'm used to that now. So when things come up, or trying out something new that could be scary. It's just like, let's go for it, let's see what happens. Because I've already kind of, done the most extreme version of that. It's just like resetting your whole life and selling everything. You just have a suitcase with like a laptop and some clothes or something, multiple times in my life, I guess. But
so there's that philosophical sort of phase-based decision making. Like, I'm gonna sell it all, strike out, do my thing, take several years, pour myself into this, but then hit that again, that tipping point to say like, okay, I've probably like, maybe there's more to go, but I've soaked in a lot of this. Right, here we go. Let's do it again. The one counter to that would be Huxley itself, right? Where this is sort of a decade-ish labor of love.
yeah.
So how would you draw the differentiation between striking out, taking several years, living in location, soaking in everything you can, but still keeping that common thread of Huxley throughout?
Well, I think a lot of it too that I didn't bring up. It's a kind of like a balance, like chasing the knowledge of learning skills, but then my life was kind of empty. And then in order for me to have the opposite, where I needed those life experiences, my art was not growing as much because I was relying on what I already knew. Like being in a steady environment and like a studio, it's easier to like grow and learn in that kind of like stable scenario. But now my life was kind of chaos, and I basically had to rely on what I had already learned. I still grew a little bit, but it was very much like my life was growing at a faster pace, or my life experiences, but the skill was maybe stagnating because I just had a laptop. I couldn't have all these GPUs for Octane and all this crazy stuff that all my friends were doing at the time. So I was being held back a little bit just from my tools not being in a stable place with a giant computer or something. So again, it's like kind of this yin yang of like, what do I need? What is the sacrifice? Okay, my art might stagnate a little bit over these years, but I really need this experience, I felt. And for Huxley was always like a kind of counterpoint to the production environment I was in that I needed to make a living. So like it kind of started at Weta, where working in the film industry is kind of like an arms race of techniques to keep advancing, and you have to pick it up or you're kind of left behind. So like on Elysium, for example, photo bashing was kind of put into the mix, and it's like, okay, the director really likes very photographic images so he can see exactly what his movie looks like. And they kind of had that experience at the company. There's people there earlier than me. It's like, oh, when I started, we were all doing pencil drawings, and then someone brought in a colored pencil, and the director just went to the colored pencil and forgot about all the pencil drawings. And then someone brought in markers, and they forgot about the pencil drawing. And then someone did a sculpture and they forgot about the drawings. And it's always like people want the most advanced thing that will show them as close to how it's going to look. And then it became ZBrush and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? And so you kind of get a sense of like, you have to keep up with all these things because that's what the clients want and are going to pay for. But on another level, I feel like I'm losing a bit of myself, and I'm not, like, I started being an artist because I love drawing and doing things a certain way. And, you have to, it's just like accepting what is needed in that environment to be paid to make a living and survive and pay your bills and stuff. But then on another level, it's like, this is the kind of art that makes me happy, but I didn't have an outlet for that anymore in the work environment. So Huxley to me was, okay, I'll do this for you, but I need to do something for myself. And all the early stuff on Huxley was hand drawn, illustrating in Photoshop, like I would be painting it on paper. And I just felt like an artist through that process. So that kind of like was almost my therapy or my safe outlet to feel like I'm still an artist and I'm building something that I think is really cool, even though I wasn't being paid for it or anything.
So you started to set the stage for the transition in NFTs as you were going through the historical trajectory. Let's continue with that, but let me start it with what ends up being the most useful thing from the entirety of your past experiences, that when you make the jump over to NFTs becomes applicable at some stage.
Well, a lot of it was just like to me, a lot of luck and timing, because in my mind, it's just like, I love all these old school graphic novel artists like Mobius and Juan Jimenez and Katsushiro Otomo, and like I want to kind of follow in their footsteps. So on my end, I just want to make something cool. Like I started Huxley before Ethereum even existed, right? Like this was so early, just like this is something I think is cool that I want to make and illustrate. And I almost published it halfway when I was halfway done, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago or so. And I was like, oh man, it's taking so long to do this. Maybe I should just publish the first half. And then when I finish the next, I'll publish the second half. And all my graphic novel friends were like, no, you have to finish the whole thing. Just stick it out. And it's better if you just finish it. And you kind of mentally calculate in your head, it's like, okay, that's going to be like 3 more years or 4 more years. And you're like, okay, 4 more years. I got 4 more years in me. Let's do it. And you just shut up and get back to work, you know. But had I published it halfway, I would not have been able to release it like I did in NFT form, because the rights would have been locked up, and it just wouldn't have been possible. So like the moment I was finishing the book, and I'd spent a year previously adapting it into a CG trailer with Sava Zukovic and a great, really small team, I was prepping for the traditional model. Like, okay, I'll go to a publisher. I'll have all the kind of pieces ready. If I go speak to a film studio and they're just like, nice art kid, but what does it look like as a movie? And you know, this is what it looks like. It's like I had all the pieces ready for like the old world, but this new avenue was out there. And like the moments when I was just like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm just gonna move to this other country because I want to learn something. Kind of the same thing, like, you know, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And just kind of dove in and made it work for this new market that unexpectedly happened when it did.
The NFT space does feel like that sell all your belongings, move to another galaxy kind of environment. So you were ready, man. Hey, let's take a quick step back, actually, for someone who's listening to this who isn't fully aware of Huxley and your history. Can you describe Huxley? I know it was to create something cool that you felt was special, and you mentioned some of the things that you started to do around it. But what about the core concept?
Well, it's a 6-part graphic novel series telling the story of these post-apocalyptic scavengers that find a ancient robot that has secrets and becomes kind of this globe-trotting adventure story as they uncover the mysteries of this robot. And what they find could change the fate of their galaxy as they know it. And we're getting close to the last, we've released 4, and we're getting close to kind of like the ending of the story. And I'm super excited for everyone to check that out. I adapted parts of the comic story into a kind of a cinematic trailer that was released last year or early this year. And it was really cool to see just like a general audience. I think it has like 3.5 or 4 million views, like fully organically, just people who love sci-fi and like, oh my God, what's this? When's the movie come out? When's the game or whatever? So it was really cool to see like people responding to it so well after so many years of work on it.
I was going to say a couple million views, no big deal. all in a day's work. So that's the concept of Huxley. Now let's go back to how you walk it forth first in the NFT space. So you find, we use the analogy, right? You find this new galaxy to walk into, you decide to experiment with it, and then ultimately throw yourself into it. What do you mint first, and how do you go about making that decision?
Well, a lot of it early on was kind of seeing what this was in the first place. I think a lot of it was people making a lot of noise at the end of the previous year, and Victor Mascara and a few friends that were starting to do this. I was like, oh, well, Victor's doing the super rare thing. What's that? And he kind of like talked me into how to apply and do this. And a lot of it was just like selling some early one-on-ones on super rare and just, what is the space? How does it work? Like, do people even like my art? Is there even an avenue here for me? I think a lot of it initially was just, people kind of ignore you at first. And a lot of it was like, I think I posted like an image a week for a while, and nothing sold for maybe a month. And then all at once, everything went. And I was like, okay, maybe people do like my art here, and this is a viable path. And that maybe built a little more confidence to kind of, okay, maybe this is where I could release Huxley instead of going to the old kind of Web 2 kind of ladder to climb. And a lot of it was just figuring out what is the best way to do this. There's just so much work. It's kind of like a giant elephant of like content. Like, how do you break this giant thing up and what makes the most sense? And for me, that was the comics and just finding the best way to release the comics. Do you do them all at once? Do you do one at a time? What's the best way to do that? And it's just like a giant like organizational and like strategy problem to solve. And I think we've been doing a pretty good job doing that. Some things work better than others, and it's always like a figuring out the best way to do it for something that long, right? Because the plan was always like, I don't want to just drop this all at once. It's too much stuff. Let's span it out and release it in more or like natural way, like a Star Wars or something would be released, and they're not to release all 10 movies at once or something. It's just like, here's the first movie, let people enjoy it. Let's get to the second one, then the third one. But the market moves so fast, so is that the best strategy? I'm not, it's hard to judge and time things sometimes.
Very, very tricky. The short-term snap like agility based decisions versus sticking to your long-term concrete vision. It's a very interesting dynamic. I'm going to backpedal one more time, and I promise I won't keep
holding
you up here in the story. I do want to go back though to when you were feeling the space out and you were experimenting and you were releasing your own artworks on Super Rare. I'm a bit taken with your first several artworks, and you looks like you were experimenting with a few different stylistic choices on Super Rare. But talk through the first couple. So you start with Altered Carbon, and then you go to Altered Carbon Brain Case. But yeah, talk those works through.
I think a lot of it those were some of my most popular images, and they were also some of the ones where I feel like I grew a lot. Especially a lot of those were during the Weta years, where I was like, I'd work all day and then I'd push myself on the weekends and nights to like take everything I learned to create something that I felt was like my best art, but also something that was my own, which I think is important. I think it was like early on where I was like starting to learn to invest in myself. And so a lot of those early images are really important to me. And like Altered Carbon especially was one of those early ones where I felt like I invested a lot in myself and applied all this crazy stuff I learned in ZBrush and made something that I think at the time, like Tumblr and all these different sites that were Blogger and Tumblr, if people remember those, Blogger and Tumblr and CG Hub and some of these early websites that we were all on responded to very well. So I felt like starting with some of my more popular images was a good place to put out there and establish like me as like a detailed like science fiction artist, and I think was a lot of the reasoning.
Do you selfishly have a favorite out of your Super Rare catalog?
Probably some of the Altered Carbon, just because what I was doing at the time, and I think that was when I was on Elysium and stuff as well, was really, I don't know, I just remember making these things. I mean, I remember making all of them, but Altered Carbon, I remember being like, wow, I can't believe I made that. Like some of those moments where you've just applied all these things that you've been learning and you're like, you're just like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Like, that's so cool. And I think a lot of them on Super Rare are kind of like that. There's this kind of like black cyborg soldier character. That one was really popular as well. And a version of that ended up in the movie Valerian is like the main robot. So there's a lot of, I don't know, it's kind of like a history of my personal art on the Super Rare, which I think is a cool collection. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Just, I mean, it's a very limited collection. I think right now there's, let's see, 2,
Like
4, 6, 8.
something?
Yep, 9 artworks. Yep. And then again, a few different looks in there. There's even there's a spoiler alert for anyone listening to this who's starting to fall down the Ben Mauro rabbit hole. But there's Copperheads actually available right now via
Oh.
collector. So just have to throw that in there, Ben. Well, actually, why don't we stay on that, because that is the case that a collector has that one listed in particular. Talk through Copperhead.
That was a bit later, and when I was really kind of starting to like learn how to take something and start growing it and expanding it. Like some of these early characters that I felt were popular and were doing well online, that establishing myself as like a detailed science fiction artist with kind of heavy anime manga influence, and it was like, okay, starting to build out a universe in a way, and Copperhead was one of the main characters of this kind of like cyberpunk or really heavy sci-fi universe, as like these lethal kind of like characters that this girl would control and like take revenge on all these people. That that's a whole other story. Someday I'll make that movie. Kind of like a Kill Bill kind of narrative with this girl controlling these like cyborg and PKF drone, or the Copperhead would be one of these that she kind of pilots with her mind.
We're gonna flag this moment. A decade from now, when you're on to that.
I'm making that movie. I'll make that movie someday.
Incredible, man. How about Evolution? How about go over to your experience with that? Because at the time,
Sure.
That was my intersection with you. I recall, unfortunately, sadly, it wasn't available when I found you, because I was obsessed enough at that moment in time where I would have been one of those people who was, going bonkers. But of course, space moves so fast that somehow, some way, I knew that it was being advertised. I knew how incredible the art looked. There was gameplay teased, and then I lost sight of you for a minute. And then the next thing I knew, you had sold out and had this $2 million release, and we're being talked about all over the place. And I'm like, man, I missed my Ben Mauro moment. But yeah, please talk Evolution through.
Yeah, so that was kind of the next phase, I guess, where the website Viv3 had contacted me, and they were like, hey, we're launching this marketplace on this new chain called Flow. And at the time, everything was so new at the time. It was like, okay, what's Flow? What's the history of this? Like, okay, Dapper made this. They did CryptoKitties. I remember CryptoKitties. It feels like they know what they're doing. They're probably going to make something great. So again, it was just like, let's go for it. Let's try it. Like, what do I have to lose? Let's see what happens. And so a lot of it was, again, taking a collection of work that I really liked, this time more aliens and creatures, which are a huge passion of mine, and turning that into a limited edition card series, and launching that on Flow and on Vive. And yeah, again, just figuring out, like, is there a market for this? Do people even like this? And getting it out there and seeing what happens. And yeah, that was really crazy experience as well, and was really fun to release those and see the response.
That was during a phase of one incredible moment after another. I feel like the space as a whole, it was really across a few different platforms and then some experimental platforms. It was like every day you would wake up and you'd see an expectation shattered, over there. I feel like that was one of them, because I remember when Vibe was being teased, I remember it looked interesting. I remember there was at the time the flow hurdle of what is this and how do I get involved in this? But then you see a couple of the artworks or the brands being teased, yours being one of them, and it's like, okay, this is really cool. And then bam, it happened. The response was massive. And I remember distinctly that being one of those hurdles where I'm like, wow, that's another echelon. And I wonder where this all goes. Yeah,
it's completely unexpected too. Like I don't know, with all this, I have no expectations. So like the super rare stuff, it's like, well, it's been a month and no one bought this. I'll keep going, here's another one. And then it's kind of like people finally take notice and attention and respond to it. And with that as well, it was like, well, let's see what happens. Like, I'm going to do my best and hope for the best. And yeah, it was just really unexpected, and yeah, the whole last year has just been very unexpected, and I don't want to say meaningful, but just like, I think for most of us, like, it's not easy to be a production artist in the film industry. And I have a lot of friends who, have given up or just burned out and felt like something had taken everything from them and kind of thrown them away. And so for me, I definitely have some of those feelings. So like when all that stuff happened in the NFT, it just kind of like an affirmation that like I was right to like invest in myself and feel like there was an avenue that we could be like shown that we have value. Because a lot of the time if you feel like you don't have value in the work environment you have for like 15 years, it definitely affects, I think, all of us. So it's just a really positive affirmation that we do have value and we are doing a good thing. And it was smart to invest in ourselves all those years, even though we were making no money doing that. No, I haven't really had the time to process everything, but it's just been a crazy 12 or so months for everyone, I think.
Well, hopefully this is one of those moments we can take a little bit of a step back and process a few things. And also just thinking through, I think since the start of your NFT career and your first minute on the blockchain, now it's getting closer to 2 years. It's starting
That's
to
true.
push too.
That's true.
21-ish months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. But I find that's a symptom of being involved in NFTs. Say, hey, the last year's been crazy. I'm like, Ben, it's been 2. I know.
That's true. No, you're right. Wow. Yeah.
I'm experiencing, the only reason that I'm saying it like that is because I recently had the same self dialogue with myself about a week ago. I'm like, it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years. It's been over 2 years since NFT now for me. Yeah.
We've been saying it's been a crazy year for a year.
Exactly. Let's go back, but on that line, let's go back to Huxley. And I think that being, I think, viewed at rightfully so as your core project, your core brand for that matter. That seems like it's destined to do really whatever you want it to at this point. There was that decade, right? There was that decade of creation that you walked into this space with. And I do think that's unique. I think a lot of artists walk into this space, of course, with their work and some form of a portfolio. And sometimes it's disparate artwork. Sometimes they're working on specific projects. But I don't know, I view Huxley as one of the most, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm looking at it is, I think it's one of the most formed ideas with a massive amount of artwork, where you were having those dialogues with yourself of, all right, roll up sleeves, let's commit another 4 years to get this graphic novel over the hump.
Yeah.
And you had all of that. And then it's a matter of doing that experimentation on Super Rare. You have your Vive experience. And then here you are with this incredible Huxley vault.
Yeah, I think that's something that maybe got lost or swept under the rug, because there's so many things getting released and it was hard to tell one from another sometimes. Or then once you do that, then everyone just says the same thing. So like, oh, that's doing that too. It's like, well, they listed that on the website, but they didn't actually do any of that work. That doesn't mean, but it got really like, I don't know, everyone just like copies the same 10 bullet points and then everything looks kind of the same, but like, yeah, to actually have all that work done ahead of time, I don't know if I've seen that. And a lot of the projects that got released were just kind of like the exact opposite, where it's like, here's the cover of a comic. If you give me money, I'll spend 10 years making a comic for you. Whereas for me, it was like, I've spent 10 years making a comic for you. Now you can buy it and read it today, which I think was hard. It got lost in there, but it's like, this is all done since like all 6 of these are done because I spent all the years making it. And I think a lot of projects now that kind of quickly put something together and sold are having to realize that I hope you have funding for those 10 years that it's going to take to get you to do the thing you claimed, kind of thing. And because you can't fake the years, right? Like you can say, it's easy to talk and say things, but like you can't fake the time to make something, and you got to put in that time to write your story, come up with your characters, design your whole universe, build that product, to create something of value. And doing that my whole career, that's kind of my bread and butter. And that's why I'm usually pretty quiet, and I just like, I'm not going to say anything until the thing is done and like, okay, I think I'm ready and I'm really happy with this, and I feel confident and comfortable putting it out there. And yeah, just it takes a long time to do things. And now planning out the next phases of everything and what I want to do next. Like I'm in the middle of a lot of things, but it's just like, okay, this is going to take a while for these next big things, but they're going to be really cool. And I don't want to do it until I'm super proud of it.
Isn't it incredible though? The past minute 30 seconds of this conversation with you going on that monologue about just that effort, the reversal, right? Having the 10 and then releasing versus releasing, taking in the funds, and then trying to create over the course of 10. That I think more people, let's put it that way, are understanding that, but I don't think it's even close to an idea that's as respected as it should be. Because I think that with the NFT space being so young, being so new, often the loudest voices in the room are falling into that category, unfortunately, of,
Yep.
Hey, I'll take, I'm a great marketer. I'm going to take this funding in, and then I'm going to promise X, Y, or Z. Now, to a few teams' credits, there will be a small percentage that find a way. And that's going to be incredible. And they're going to be historical unicorns in their own right. But there's going to be a vast majority that don't. And then if we flip it around, often the quietest voices in the room are people like yourself with incredible track records, the 10 years of creation, fighting through that inflection point of looking at the 4 years, deciding, yes, I'm going to do it, persisting and getting there. But again, it's one of the quietest voices in the room. So oftentimes it takes others doing research and being discerning and letting some time pass and, coming to a lot of those ideas, and then having, pieces of the community start to rally around that, which I think what's amazing about your case is that I think the community's done just that. And in a lot of places, I am hearing those kinds of dialogues, and clearly Huxley's been well received. How do you interpret that side of things from your end?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the struggle for me, because there's always not the temptation, but like, okay, we could do this and blast out marketing in this way, but it's like, is that really creating the right attention and the right value? It's an interesting one for sure. But for me, I'd rather always do things the right way and make less than create some crazy thing that I'm not experienced to create. And yeah, I always just want to do things the right way, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, it just feels very on Ben Mauro brand, like from my perception, my interpretation of you and how you've carried yourself, and learning about you at first, and then being able to intersect at a few events, and wanting to do this origin story. Then finally we come back around to it, and I have a great opportunity, a very enjoyable opportunity to go through the body of your work in the space and a little bit before it. And it really does, when people spend the time, it really does speak for itself. And I think as more time passes, examples like yourself will continue to just naturally climb because they deserve to.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, I mean, for me, that's kind of like just my personality is like, I'm quiet, spend a lot of time to make something that I'm proud of, and then get it out the door. But it is tough, because the space really wants like something every 5 seconds, like, tell me more, tell me what's going on. Like, but sometimes it's like, or like say with like movies and stuff, like George Lucas spent 3 years just writing the script for Star Wars, but in the NFT space, it'd be like, when's the movie coming out? What's happening? It's like the best in the world took 3 years to even write that great movie that you love. Like it takes a long time to create things sometimes. So it's just hoping that people can understand, like, if teams are quiet or something, it's not, they're making something really cool, but it just takes time. And just, I guess it's just building that relationship with everyone, and they know that, you know, the time's not being wasted and people are working very hard to make something really cool.
So Ben, we talked about super rare, we talked about evolution a bit, and we started to talk through Huxley. But the big question I have for you, I'd love to hear it in your words for folks. Where should they look, right? So break down the current Huxley universe as it relates to the NFT space, and talk someone through it. They just wanted to take a spin through it from, you know, the avatars to the comics.
Sure. The comics are probably the easiest entry point. And I think with issue 4, you're able to read all the previous comics, so you can get the full story up to date. And then, yeah, there's 2 avatar sets, humans and robots, that we've released so far. AI will be next. And yeah, the robots will have different, it's kind of like, yeah, it's just kind of like what you want to be involved in. We kind of allow people to kind of choose their own adventure in a way, where some people love comics, some people just want avatars, and we're kind of giving them those different collector paths to be more involved in the project, based on what they like. Yeah.
And so what's literally next in terms of timescale? Is it the next piece of the comic book journey? Is it, you mentioned AI on the avatar side?
Yeah, so there's 2 more comics left, and I really want to get the entire story out in the world for everyone, and planning some cool stuff for people that collect all the comics, and then figuring out the best way to do the tokenomics for the final AI avatars at the end. But right now, for me, I want to make sure the comics are all out there. We complete that kind of cycle, get everyone their physicals, and everyone's happy with these first early, like, collector edition kind of versions of the story. And then there's a lot of other things on the horizon with film and TV and games and stuff. But right now, I really want to complete this early cycle of all these comics for the first story, and complete that as successfully as possible.
Exciting, man. I'm excited. I when growing up, I was a comic book collector for a span of, I don't know, like a good formative 5 to 7, 8 years, somewhere in there. You know, you have those different peaks and valleys of, you know, being fascinated and obsessed, and then you pull back a little bit and switch to like baseball cards for a minute. And then, but it's a part of that history. And having fallen, you know, completely into the NFT space and spending all my time here, some of the substance going on here, I love a piece of that substance to be a formative comic book like Huxley, even though you've spent a ton of years and a ton of time on it coming out of the NFT space. I think that's really special.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the stuff in the story, there is a lot of interesting things, especially later, that are kind of tied to like some of the ideas that are pretty prevalent in Web3 and the blockchain and stuff. So like, I don't know, it felt like the most current and interesting way to release something. And I spent all this time on it. And I know a lot of friends who, if they spent all that time, they would see this as like, no way, I'm not risking my life's work on this brand new thing. But for me, I was just, I don't know, I guess because I went through all that before, just like traveling and changing my life so quickly, that's just like, let's try it. Let's see what happens. So yeah, it feels like pretty appropriate and cool way to release something like that.
Ben, you ready to play a lightning round?
Sure.
All right, hot takes, couple words, sentence, basically the first thing that comes to your mind. And if you get super passionate about anything we talk about, just hit pause and go off on a tangent.
Sure.
All right, lightning round. Topic number 1, first thing that comes to mind when I say the word Huxley.
Sorry. First thing, post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure. I don't know, like with Huxley, like I'm obsessed with the careers of Katsuhiro Otomo, who made Akira, and Hayao Miyazaki, who made Nausicaa and Castle in the Sky and all these amazing Totoro. Like for me, Huxley is me trying to follow in their footsteps in a way. So like Otomo making Akira, then adapting his own comic into the most, to me, one of the best or the best like anime of all time. And I feel like I'm getting close to like my Akira being out there. And for me, the next phase would be adapting and making my whatever version of that would be as an animation in some form would be, I don't know, I'm just kind of, I feel like I'm just following in their footsteps, and Huxley to me is like, this is where I am in this larger career path. I know it's not a very quick answer.
No, I set you up. I set you up with the first one. I set you up with a tangent. All right. How about if I throw the topic at you, Ethereum?
Maybe freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there's a way to, it just allowed for a lot of things to happen that I thought would never happen, or maybe not for 10 years. So thank you, Vitalik.
How about flow?
Innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Like they created something really cool, and I'm excited to see where that goes in the future.
Super rare.
I don't want to say innovation again, but like, I don't know, they made something really cool and kind of created a fascinating bridge for like fine artists and digital artists, and yeah, like evolution and innovation.
A kindred spirit or spirits, meaning someone that you see, an artist in the NFT space currently, that has an unbelievable track record that you were aware of prior, that you think might be soft-spoken and underrated.
Maybe, I mean, Victor Mascara is, in my opinion, really big, but maybe not as appreciated as some of the others who are much louder voices as well. But like, to me, he's just, I've loved his work for years. I remember on Blogger and all these old websites just loving his work and saving it as reference, and just like, man, it's so cool. So maybe Victor Mascara would be, for me, one of those people.
You're speaking to my heart.
I don't know. He's got a lot of the same influences as me, but obviously took it in a totally different direction. And I just appreciate and love like everything he does. Just as an art fan, I've collected some of his work, but not nearly enough. But I just love his stuff.
I learned MetaMask to bid on his first ever super. fun little
awesome.
fact. Yeah. Good times. All right. How about now let's take the stipulation off of it, from the kindred spirit to just somebody else, anybody else within the NFT space that you either saw an artwork of theirs and it dropped your jaw, or you just think in general they deserve some more attention.
A lot of the ones have a lot of attention already.
Or even throw out one of them that you just think is so special regardless.
Yeah. I mean, like Victor and Fuckrender have been doing some really awesome stuff. I think Fuckrender has been doing some really, I don't know, just the way he just went for it and pushed a lot of things and just released such a kind of large body of work in such a short amount of time is really impressive to me. And I think he really opened a lot of doors and paved the way for a lot of people in a cool way as well. And also just the Artifact team and the Parallel team, I really admire what those guys have done as well, and doing it at such a high quality, especially Parallel team. I think they have a very similar mentality to me of just like kind of a bit quiet, just make amazing stuff and put it out there. And I feel like people like that will be doing well for a very long time.
Not that it will ever happen, not that anything is planned, but if you had no work, no Huxley comic, nothing going on right now, and you had just a month on your hands, you could do anything that came to your mind, who would you collaborate with? And just you would automatically assume they'd be invested in the idea and interested, and you could just pull anything off.
Like not an NFT artist or in the NFT space?
Actually go anywhere. Go. It could be a non-NFT artist, could be an NFT artist.
Well, I mean, I'd love to do something with Atomo someday before I die. That would just be kind of a dream. Like I met Sid Mead a few times. He was one of my heroes too. Just amazing science fiction artists. And Mobius was probably one of my biggest heroes. I just never got to meet him. So like before he passed, and so a lot of things like that is just like, okay, if we want to go even deeper, like I feel like there's a finite amount of imagined worlds that humanity has created since the beginning of time. And the people I really admire have kind of like expanded that in quite a significant way. And if I can do that as well, like basically my life goal as an artist is like, I want to help push that pool of imagination a bit further. If I could do that by the end of my life, I feel like that was a good use of my time, and that was a good life. And I did my duty as an artist to expand the world's imagination in some form so that the next generation that comes after me will be as inspired as I was by these guys like Otomo, who just kind of like left a dent in humanity's imagination, if you will. So if there's a way I can collaborate or do something even in such a small way with people that I feel have left that mark, that would be dream. Yeah.
I enjoy that a lot. I think you're well on your way, man. But let's go chronology now. Let's go years. The first thing that comes to mind when I throw the year 2021 at you.
I think a lot of it just innovation and disruption was just like all that year was just so many things coming to a point. We're all stuck at home from COVID. We're all figuring out ways to do new things, and it just kind of, so many things just kind of like intersected and kind of exploded. And like I kind of knew something like that might happen, but again, I thought it might take 5-10 years before something like that happened. So to have it happen so soon and unexpectedly, and everyone's just like, oh my God, what's happening? What is going on here? Like, what is even happening, was just a fascinating time to be alive and be a part of and try to figure out what's going on and be a part of it in some way. It really felt like a moment in art history or something. And I didn't want to be on the sidelines and sit back. And I have a lot of friends right now who are like, man, why wasn't I part of that? Or they were on the negative side and harping on negative talking points when all that happened. And it's like, imagine if like oil paint existed and you're like, what is that? I don't want to be a part. Or like the camera or something came out and you're like, I don't want to be a part of that thing. But or you could have had a chance to be one of the first photographers ever and establish yourself in this totally new medium or something. It kind of feels a bit like that. And I guess also most of us and kind of lived through in our lives the birth of the internet and saw that, like no internet to early internet to full internet. Like living through that felt very similar to what happened in 2021. Like it just felt like there's kind of like this internet thing that was kind of there, and then suddenly it was so useful and valuable, and people were trying to figure out what this even was, what is the best way, like what is a website, you can make money on a website, how does that even work? And then the big players kind of established themselves long term, the Amazons and stuff. But like it felt like that moment at the beginning of the internet that I lived through, but I was just too young to even do anything about it. But you kind of lived through it, you saw it like in your life. So it felt very much like this all over again in a different way.
Mm-hmm. How about 2022?
Probably just crunch mode.
I was gonna say,
Just like
apparently it didn't exist in your world, right?
it's that 2022 flew by. Just, I mean, we're still in it, but like that was a lot of just like probably overworking too much, but trying to complete everything, release all of Huxley and get through it and successfully complete every piece as we went along the way, and just hard work, I guess. It's always hard work, but just that in particular, just making sure things are moving and getting completed successfully and doing what I have to do to make sure everything looks great and plan for the future. And yeah.
And a good way to wrap the lightning round, 2023.
Maybe bigger picture things, big picture, future planning. Just like there's a lot of things happening right now that will be some of the bigger things that are going to be really cool. And I feel like a lot of that will be taking up a lot of my time in 2023.
Can't wait to see it come to fruition. Ben Mauro, we did it. Your origin story.
Thanks so much, Roger. That was really fun.
This is a blast. It's a blast, especially for someone with so much life experience. You've been there, you've gone through those phases, you've sacrificed, you've traveled, you've sold those possessions. Somehow you went from a girlfriend to a wife in that frame of time, which I think speaks to that relationship.
Yeah, I remember hearing something like Bill Murray was recommending to people, like, if you want to know if someone is the right person for you, go live on the road and travel for a while, and you'll quickly see if you can deal with the most intense situations, and if you can survive that, like, you're probably pretty good for each other. And I would completely agree. Like, there's so much you have to deal with on the road, and just with nothing. If you can be happy with nothing, I think you can be happy with that person for quite some time.
Yeah, it's good advice. It's good advice. Well, hey man, we have our ass peeled. People out there, check out Huxley. If you don't, if you haven't already, check out Huxley, check out Ben's art and career. We'll definitely share some links in the show notes over on YouTube. And man, I can't wait to do this again in 2 years, but it'll feel like a year.
Yes, I think so too. Thanks so much, Roger.
All right, man, take care.